right, now we got a reporter for you guys who tricks the right wing into revealing the truth by being white. Okay, I'm exaggerating, I'm partly kidding, but as you'll see, not exactly. Okay, so Lauren Windsor's with us. She's the executive producer of The Undercurrent. We've given her credit in the past on shows for being one of the best reporters in getting the Republicans to reveal amazing things. So Lauren, welcome back to the show.
Thanks, Jake.
No problem. So look, you don't hide who you are in your real life, right? You say that you're an advocacy journalist and even a political consultant, etc. But we're going to show a couple of amazing videos here, including Mo Brooks admitting the most important thing in politics of my lifetime. Okay, so how do you get them to trust you? And sometimes it's just you put a camera up and they say it, right? But a lot of other times they're like, oh, okay, Lord Windsor, I can't wait to tell you all of my secrets. How do you do it?
I mean, I think it's just human nature that people like to have praise heaped on them. So if you speak to someone as though you're really a fan of what they're doing, they are often such a target of hatred that it's a relief to hear appreciation, and they will often reward you.
That's interesting. Sometimes I look at tweets that are complimentary of me, and I'm like, are they trying to Windsor me? So, Lauren, now to my original point/joke, is it also partly because you seem like a person that would be on their side, and that maybe gets them to open up?
Well, yeah, I mean, I definitely play the role. Everyone wants to believe, and this is the thing about politics, is that that's different from Hollywood or being a celebrity in some other sense, is that in politics, you're constantly trying to bring more people into the fold, right? Recruit more allies. Whereas if you're a famous person, yeah, you need to sell a new CD or get people to go to your movie, but you don't have to sit there and convince each person to do it. Like the fans who are showing up already love you, right? But you could have a lot of, every vote matters as a politician, and so it's just not as exclusive. It's so much harder to gain fans. And so I just think that for politicians, if they see an easy target, and particularly young voters to bring into the fold, it ends up paying off dividends in the long run if they give them just a little bit of water, like a plant, you're harvesting the crops for the future.
Yeah, indeed, and a lot of them are Republican men. Let's also keep it real on that too.
Yeah.
So, okay, it is what it is. But now let's get to the important things that your reporting has revealed, and there are a lot of doozies in here. We're going to focus on two, but there's so much more. Everybody, check out The Undercurrent. So one's about John Eastman. You've got him on tape admitting something very important. But first, can you tell the audience who John Eastman is?
So John Eastman is the attorney who wrote the infamous coup memo, which basically encouraged states to put forward alternate slates of electors. So in this first set of clips, our first reporting on John Eastman, we spoke with him shortly after he had given an interview to the National Review Online, where he had walked away from that memo. He said, nobody believed that was a real thing. You'd be crazy to believe it could happen, and it was just something that we put together as a hypothetical. But then, within a week's time, finding him at this Claremont Gala where he's a senior fellow, started telling him how much we were fans of his work, that we had watched his speech at the January 6th rally, and we were inspired to be supporters of Claremont, and he started to sing a different tune.
So now, guys, remember, this is a memo that I talk about a lot on the show. So this is where they get the fake electors to replace the real electors. That's actually at the heart of the coup. The reason that he's disowning it in public is because that's actual insurrection. And if the Democrats had any strength at all, they would have actually put people like John Eastman in jail for trying to literally steal our democracy. This is, in my opinion, the worst of the worst. So now watch the tape as Mr. That memo, I don't know who wrote that memo, okay, turns around in the exact opposite direction, because the memo was trying to get Mike Pence to say the real electors should not be seated and we should go to the fake electors, but Pence didn't listen, and now in a situation where there's sanity in the world, prosecutors would be looking into John Eastman, Peter Navarro, Steve Bannon for this strategy, and you have important evidence there. Did any prosecutor ever ask you to see that tape?
No one's reached out to me about it. I have been told from other politicos that they think that it's being used as evidence for the committee, but I haven't been reached out by anyone directly.
Okay, yeah, but the committee has no power. I'm not interested in the committee. I'm interested in prosecutors who would actually set a precedent that you're not allowed to do a coup in America. That's what we're looking for, and you were very helpful in getting that important evidence to it. So of course, no prosecutors talk to you. All right, so now let's go to how politics actually works. So this is a mobile.
You're not cynical at all, Jing. Not cynical at all.
No, not at all. Democrats are going to fight hard for you, and the Republicans care about the rule of law. Okay, Mo Brooks is a very conservative Republican from Alabama. He was in good with Donald Trump, and he even gave a speech on January 6th, but with a flak jacket on because he knew that he was speaking to a violent mob that was probably going to kill people. Anyways, but Trump has now disavowed him, etc. But here he's giving a speech. Who's he giving a speech to, Lauren?
Well, so this is just to supporters in Alabama. So he's running for Senate in Alabama for Richard Shelby's seat, and it should be noted that the reason that we went to the Mo Brooks event was because Mo Brooks led the charge to challenge the Electoral College in the House. And so for folks that aren't quite aware of the significance of that, prior to Tommy Tuberville, my reporting showing that Tommy Tuberville was going to challenge the Electoral College, everyone in DC thought that, this is just Mo Brooks and then crazy House right-wingers, saying they're gonna challenge the Electoral College. It's not really gonna happen because it's not gonna go anywhere in the Senate. And so, we were looking to uncover evidence, any sort of context to Mo Brooks' thinking about why he launched his challenge to the Electoral College. But in so doing, during his speech to this handful of voters, it was a very small crowd because of Trump pulling the endorsement. He, I think, became a lot more candid because he realizes that he's in the fight of his life.
And could anybody have walked into this event?
Yeah, anyone.
Okay, so you guys just were smart enough to think, I bet he says something stupid. Okay, but in this case, to be fair to Mo Brooks, he didn't say something stupid. He said something true. So let's watch.
So where does a congressman come up with $1 million to be chairman of one of these A committees? You can't get it from Joe and Jane Citizen because Joe and Jane Citizen back home, they're not going to be contributing that kind of money. You have to get it from the special interest groups. And with the special interest groups, there is a quid pro quo. If you don't do what they tell you to do, they won't give you the money that finances your chairmanship.
Lauren, that's the most true thing I've heard a politician say, any politician, Republican or Democrat, in my lifetime. There is literally, these are legalized bribes. That's the only way to get the chairmanships. He explained it there. I thought it was super telling that no politicians ever admitted that, and no reporter has ever asked. So now my question to you, and I genuinely don't know the answer to this. Did other reporters look at that and go, wow, Lauren, you got this amazing tape. Can you come on and talk about how there's systemic corruption in American government?
Well, on Twitter, several, I think, commented on it. But when I reached out to people and we talked about it, the general feeling was like, oh, well, that's known. That's just the way that Washington operates. And I just remember being so struck. I mean, I came out of, the money in politics, like getting money out of politics movement in LA after the Occupy movement. And his candor just really struck me. And even if it had been reported before, I thought, well, this is a really good breakdown of things that people who don't live inside the Beltway, I think they'd want to know this. And so when I put it out, it actually, went fairly viral. I mean, I think at this point, last time I checked, it had over 500,000 views. I'm not sure where it's at now, but I didn't have any reporters reach out to me. People acted like it was kind of de rigueur for DC. But online, people definitely had reactions as to, wow, this is not something I knew before, and why aren't more people reporting on this?
No, because you're doing, in a sense, true reporting, where you're getting actual information to people about how government works. That's why I knew no other reporter would cover it. Like, for all I knew, you were going to say, "Oh my God, Rachel Maddow had me on our show," and then Chris Hayes, and then New York Times wrote about it, and then Washington Post did an expose, etc. I didn't know the answer, okay? But as it turns out, of course, none of that happened, and the explanation is super ironic. Oh well, everybody knows that. How would everybody know that if you've never reported on it? And
when I Googled it online, Jink, I'm telling you, the only thing that came up was like a Brookings Institute article on their website that showed, that these committee chairmanships were, it's not just a Republican thing. It's both parties actually.
100% right. That's right.
Require you to fundraise in order to get those key placements.
Yeah, and the reporters say we all know it. Yet your Google search, and anybody can do this, shows that they've never reported on it. Wow, isn't that super weird? That all the reporters in Washington know about massive corruption in politics. They think it's perfectly normal and lovely, and they never tell you guys. Well, I guess that's why you got to check out Undercurrent, because she's actually showing you that they're saying it with their own faces. That's a politician. That's the first time I've seen a politician be honest. All right, now we're going to talk to a candidate who is best known for being a stripper. We're going to have to talk about that. But in Washington, she's something that is considered far more outrageous, a progressive. Okay, Alexandra Hunt, running for Congress in Pennsylvania's 3rd district. Welcome to the show. How you doing?
I'm doing well. I like that.
Okay, so Alexandra, look, a lot of people are talking about the stripper angle, right? At this point, you got to be super sick of it, is my guess. The election's in 11 days. At the same time, it brought you a ton of attention that most progressive candidates don't get, right? Most progressive candidates have their campaign die from complete inattention from the media. So it's a mixed blessing or a silver lining. So my question is, are you glad that you talked about it? Are you glad that it got covered? Or are you so sick of it that it overshadowed everything else and was counterproductive?
I don't think it was counterproductive at all. I think that it has been important that I talk about my experience as working as a stripper, and that I've led with all the pieces of my story that make me who I am today, so that people can understand where I come from and how I'm going to move if elected and when elected to office. So I do not regret speaking on it at all. That doesn't mean that it's been easy. It's been hard. It's been tiring. to go up against an incumbent and to go up against stigma as well. And that's made, I think, our campaign trail much more difficult to navigate, but I think it was an important thing to do. And so absolutely no regrets of doing that.
Yeah, so let me ask you one standard question, then we'll get back into politics. So I know the old school way of thinking. Like my parents are from the old country, and they would say, "She is such smart girl. Why she do that?" Okay, so why did you do that back in the day? People want to know, but I'm dying to answer it for you. But I'm asking you a question, so I'm going to let you answer.
Well, people have all different sorts of reasons for getting involved in the club or the sex work scene. And for me, it was I needed money. At the time, I was in college and I didn't have a ton of hours to work. I couldn't get a full-time job, but I had bills to pay, and I was working at the on-campus restaurant, and it just getting tips from other college students was not paying my bills. And I had heard that you could make a lot of money at a strip club. So I went to one, and I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna jump into this world and see how it goes. And the rest is history. Yep.
So Alexandra, now let's talk politics, because in the Democratic circles, being a progressive is far more outrageous, right? And so just ask Nina Turner how the press treats you if you're a progressive, right? Or me, or Bernie, or anyone else. So, and you're running against an incumbent, which they despise. So how's the race going? How have you been received by all quarters? The press, the Democratic Party. The voters will find out about it, but press and the Democratic Party, man.
The press has been very fascinated with the former stripper aspect of my past, and has really honed in on that. The right-wing media has totally dragged my name through their discourse for having an abortion and speaking to that. And then as for the Democratic Party, they can't stand when I show up in a room. Today, I was at a PA Dems rally for pro-choice. And as I said, I've had an abortion. I've been on Fox News for talking about having an abortion. The Democratic Party does not embrace me or my lived experiences as a candidate and what I could offer that into the conversation that's happening at the table and in these rooms right now. And it's even worse with the Philadelphia Democrats. So people have asked, has the DCCC reached out to help at all? And absolutely not. Have not heard from them.
No, you're running against an incumbent. If the DCCC reached out, it'd be with a 2x4.
Right.
So no, you don't want them reaching out. And I'm not surprised that the Democratic Party is the most. All right, now we're going to talk to a candidate who. So Alexandra, I've been calling you a progressive because you're for Medicare for all and $15 minimum wage and all those progressive positions, right? But what would be the difference if you went in? Because most incumbents, you're right, including Dwight Evans, who no one has ever heard of on the national scene, because he probably took the seat and then warmed that seat up for decades, right? I don't know anything about him because he never does anything. Never, ever, ever. Never heard of him. He's never fought on anything. Totally useless on the national scene, right? So what would you do differently?
Well, I mean, I would fight for things. I am not headed to Congress to make friends and to sit comfortably in a seat. I honor my words and my platform that I'm running on. So for example, my opponent does not support the Green New Deal. because he's personally invested in the fossil fuel industry. He doesn't support universal health care because he takes money from private health insurance companies. I'm running on what we call a New Deal for Education, which is calling for the federal funds to be invested into public education, as well as the cancellation of student debt and tuition-free public college. My opponent was in the State House first, and he defunded public education, founded his own charter school, and takes money from my personal student loan provider. He's tough on crime, takes money from private prisons, and believes in broken window policing, and also is personally invested in weapons manufacturers. Whereas I'm running on criminal justice reform and pushing for more rehabilitation through that system. So I believe I'm running on a compassionate platform that's fighting to put compassion into government, whereas, as I said, he's complacent with the status quo, which is really take money from corporations and sit comfortably in a seat.
Did you say he's taking money from private prison companies?
Yep.
And this district's in Philly, where criminal justice reform is desperately needed. And now with actually the prosecutor there, you're finally getting some criminal justice reform. But in Philly, in that district, he's taking money from private prisons to lock people up for profit.
Yep.
And Democrats in the media think that you have morality issues?
Exactly.
Okay. Do you take any corporate PAC money?
No.
Okay, by the way, the website is alexandramhunt.com, alexandramhunt.com. We'll put the link down below in the description box. Now, Alexandra, look, let's keep it real. You stripped your clothes for money, but he is stripping his principles for money.
Agreed.
What do you think is worse?
Well, I obviously think that being I will change my language here, but one of our merchandise items says I may have danced for money, but I'm no corporate bleep. And so I obviously think that taking corporate money is far worse in morals, and selling out your constituents is far worse than taking your clothes off.
And guys, I'm just saying it that way to make a point. I don't think there's anything wrong with stripping. So what? So what? Who cares? Who cares? How does that bother anyone? Like, the idea that that's immoral is like just so stupid and old school for no reason, okay? But Alexandra, if you did take corporate PAC money, do you think they'd be giving it to you just for their health, for the general welfare? Or do you think that if you took money from defense contractors and oil companies and drug companies like your opponent does, that they might ask for a favor in return?
Oh, absolutely. And that's what they got out of my opponent, but they won't get it from me.
Hey everyone, Joe Scarborough here, author of Black Buck, which is Shop TYT's first fiction book ever. I'm honored. So, Black Buck is about a young man named Darren who's living in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn. He lives with his mom, he has his girlfriend, he has his best friend, he has his neighborhood, and his neighborhood has him. Darren's also working at a Starbucks in Midtown Manhattan. And one day, this man, who's real suave and good looking, comes in and asks Darren to give him his regular. But for some reason, Darren says no. This man named Rhett Daniels, who's the CEO of a startup called Someone, located on the 36th floor of the same building, is impressed. And he invites Darren upstairs, and then he extends an offer to join his elite sales team. Darren reluctantly joins, and he soon realizes that he's not the only black salesperson there. He's the only black person in the entire company. So he goes through hell and back in order to make it to the top. And once there, he has status, money, power, but he says, you know what? I don't like being the token black guy. So he hatches a plan to help other people of color infiltrate America's tech startup sales teams, redefining what it means to be a minority in the workplace. This book definitely, if you couldn't tell, touches on many things that are relevant to this moment that we're all living in right now, but it's also connected to the many moments in history that have come before today. I hope that you read it, I hope that you enjoy it, and if you want to order a copy, go to shoptyt.com. Thank you, be well, and happy 2021.
All right, welcome to the Young Turks. Cenk Uygur, Anna Kasparian with you guys. As usual, we have news that is terrible in regards to Republicans and Democrats. Okay, which side are you on? The news' side. Okay, Anna, let's do it.
All right, well, let's begin with the protests that took off over the weekend.
Not the church, not the state, the people must decide.
I'm the people. I'm the people. I am the people. The people have decided, the court has decided. You lose.
There you see a man explaining exactly what the anti-choice movement is all about: power and control over women's bodies.
You have no choice. Not your body, not your choice. Your body is mine.
So the video that you just watched featured a man who is allegedly not part of the New York Fire Department, although he is wearing fire department gear. It's some guy who decided to be provocative while demonstrators are protesting the forthcoming reversal of Roe v. Wade, which means that the constitutional right to an abortion will be overturned. He thought it would be great to specifically say, Cenk, what we already knew the anti-choice movement is all about. It's not about life, it's not about death, it's all about control, and specifically control over women's bodies. He said it clearly. Now, there's some question in regard to who this guy is. There's all sorts of theories online. We can't confirm any of them, so unfortunately we don't have a specific identity as of now. But what are your thoughts on the video that we just watched?
Oh, we got to find out who it is, because we got to get the name to Nancy Pelosi. She's going to want him to be a Democratic candidate. Since she's campaigning for anti-choice candidates, she's going to be thrilled to find this guy. So if you're catching feelings over it, I don't know, go ask her. She's supporting anti-choice Henry Cuellar, who's voted to defund Planned Parenthood, voted with the Republicans on abortion issues, will very likely vote against codifying Roe. So why Nancy Pelosi's helping him? Ask her, ask Clyburn, who's also helping the anti-choice movement. So what does the anti-choice movement think? Yeah, that guy summarized it perfectly. And you're not supposed to say the quiet part out loud, but since he's not a politician, he just said it. Yeah, we just want to control your bodies. We want the government to control your bodies, and not you. But we're on the side of freedom, and Pelosi's on the side of Democrats.
Right. I mean, the Democrats, we have a ton prepared, to get into a discussion about that. But for now, I do want to just quickly discuss the, in my opinion, fairly small protest that took place over the weekend, the outrage that sparked by the right wing, and then more importantly, the message that we're now getting from the White House. Now, there were protesters who gathered outside the home of Justice Brett Kavanaugh. There were other justices who were targeted with these protests. They were relatively small, a dozen people showing up. Some reports say as many as 100 demonstrators showing up, and they're reacting to a pretty serious piece of news that indicates that women will have the rights stripped away from them, the same rights that they've had for the last 50 years. So there is understandable outrage in response to that. Also keep in mind that we're talking about justices who lied during their confirmation hearings when they were specifically asked about the potential reversal of Roe v. Wade. You have Brett Kavanaugh and Neil Gorsuch saying, again, two senators during their hearings that it's settled law. It's already settled. There's precedent. We're not going to mess with Roe v. Wade. And of course, as we know, thanks to that leaked draft, they are in fact planning on overturning it. Well, what is the response to the demonstrators from the White House? Jen Psaki puts out a statement saying, quote, POTUS, meaning Joe Biden, strongly believes in the constitutional right to protest as long as it's convenient. That part I added, of course. But that should never include violence, threats, or vandalism. Judges perform an incredibly important function in our society, namely a function that strips us of our rights. I added that part myself. And they must be able to do their jobs without concern for their personal safety. Oh, is POTUS and the White House overall concerned about the comfort and the privacy of the elite in this country, the same elite who have put themselves in a position to strip rights away from Americans, namely American women? Oh, are we making them uncomfortable by demonstrating outside of their homes? Is that something that makes them concerned about their privacy? I mean, it's just amazing to me because it shows you that the elite in this country will continue to protect the elite, even as they strip us of our rights over our own bodies, rights that give us agency. And again, the very people who are engaged in that mission to strip us of our rights are also the individuals who couldn't be bothered to wear a mask, which is temporary, which helps prevent the spread of a contagious virus that has already killed hundreds of thousands of Americans, many of whom didn't even need to die. But of course, the right wing is so pro-life that they will happily spread the virus, putting other people in jeopardy, while of course regulating your uterus.
Okay, so obviously there's the irony here of privacy for me, but not for thee. Apparently, I can't wait to see if they're gonna put an addendum to this opinion because it isn't published yet. Now remember, you women out there, you have no right to privacy and the government can snatch up your body anytime they like. But we're gonna say that you're not allowed to protest in front of our homes because we are the elites and we have a right to privacy. Now, look, I've said this a million times on the show. I don't like the protests at the homes. I think that they lead to dangerous situations, etc. But by the way, they put up this giant barrier around the Supreme Court. Well, wait a minute. If we can't protest in front of the Supreme Court, where the hell would we protest? What would be wrong with a protest at the Supreme Court? That doesn't make any sense. I mean, we're not right wingers. Nobody's gonna storm the place chanting about hanging an official. That's the right wing, right? And there's no indication of that. And in terms of hypocrisy here, I'll reiterate a point I made on the first day, and now it's all over social media a week later. Christine Blasey Ford, how about her privacy? They right-wing monsters went to her home over and over and over. She had to keep switching different places she was at. Was everybody just beside themselves in anger over that? No, barely noticed. The right wing loved it. So there's just no end to their goddamn hypocrisy. And as they did all this, and the Biden administration says, "Oh, Joe, no, we must protect the elites and the right wing." Okay, fine, no problem. I don't like the home protests anyway. But did it gain you any fans in the right wing? I'm sure that they say, "Oh, well, now Biden's moderate because he's looking to protect them." No, of course not. Instead of Fox News host Steve Hilton turned around and said Biden is a fascist because he's threatening the lives of the Supreme Court justices.
Yeah, so in fact, why don't we go to that video because I want you to see how insane his argument is. And this is, you know what, the Biden administration deserves it. They deserve it because they cower to the extremists in the right wing over and over again, thinking that they're gonna get cookies for it, but they get slapped down over and over again because guess what, the right wing understands politics. Whereas the Democratic Party, I mean, they just love the right wing making them their bitches. They love it. So here's Steve Hilton doing just that.
Oh, you see fascism down the line, do you? It is already here. Thanks to your guy. They talk about fascism. Jen Psaki was asked what Biden thinks about Supreme Court justices being targets for potential violence in the wake of the leaked ruling.
So he doesn't care if they're protesting outside the Supreme Court or outside someone's private residence.
I don't have an official US government position on where people protest.
No official government position on where people protest. These protests outside John Roberts' house, outside Brett Kavanaugh's house, they're against the law. But the Biden regime has no position on it. Biden has still not condemned it. He wants this. Biden wants rule by the mob, not the rule of law. This is not the behavior of a man who's fit to be the leader of the free world. He promised to be a unifying healer and ended up an authoritarian demagogue.
An authoritarian demagogue. Now we read you the tweet from Jen Psaki They're urging demonstrators to please be polite. Your rights will be stripped away from you and we'll do nothing to stop it. But please be polite to the very individuals who have stripped those rights from you. And remember, you're hearing from someone who works on the same network that has minimized what happened on January 6th, okay? Where you have a giant group of rioters storming the Capitol because they didn't like the outcome of our democratic process. They didn't like the outcome of the 2020 presidential election. If you need visuals to help you understand how outlandishly stupid Steve Hilton's argument is here, I can remind you of what January 6th looked like. Let's take a look at what real mob rule looks like.
Multiple capital injuries. Multiple capital injuries.
So let's not get it twisted about the double standard that we're seeing from right-wing commentators like Steve Hilton, okay? Right-wing extremists engaging in mob rule, engaging in riots, engaging in forms of intimidation, coercion, whatever it is, hunky-dory, they're doing nothing wrong. In fact, it's the equivalent of going on a friendly little tour in the nation's capital. But when it comes to people who are enraged, they're feeling justified rage because they will no longer have agency over their own rights. Couple dozen of them get together in front of Brett Kavanaugh's house. Oh my God, this is fascism. This is fascism. And you know who falls for it? The Democrats, the White House, Biden with his impotent, weak, pathetic leadership. That's what we see. That is what is really happening and transpiring in front of us right now.
So Steve Hilton has been on this show, and I know him a little bit because of that. And I know that he's actually a really bright guy. So there's no way.
Come on, Cenk.
No, hold on. Listen to what I'm saying. There's no way that he believes that stuff. I guarantee you that he thinks his audience is a bunch of dupes, and he could feed them any lie and get away with it. I mean, he just talked about rule by mob. He knows his audience loves the mob, and he said authoritarian, threatening lives. His audience that loves the January 6th mob, that mob was literally chanting, hang Mike Pence, hang Mike Pence. They were calling for murder of their own vice president. Steve Hilton, Fox News has no problem with that. You dare to protest us taking away the freedom of all women in the country and having the jackbooted thugs of the government control their bodies? How dare you? You're authoritarian and fascist. Look, it's a massive trolling operation. He's rubbing it in the Democrats' faces. It doesn't matter what you do. It doesn't matter how much you surrender to us. We're still gonna call you fascist and authoritarian. Why? Number one, we're gonna take the power of that word away. So when my fascist friends actually do a violent takeover of the government, well, we smeared everybody as fascist so no one can tell. And besides which, he's correctly deduced that the Democrats are bitches. And all you have to do is slap them across the face, okay? And I don't, and I just want to be clear about it, obviously, proverbially. Although with the Republicans, they might literally do it. And Biden might be like, oh, thank you, sir. Oh God, that felt so good for a Republican to acknowledge me and to have contact with me. So, and now you say, hey, Jake, that's too much. Come on, you can't say that. Biden wouldn't give in to Steve Hilton, but wait a minute, he did. The statement from Psaki was after the Fox News segment. Biden said, oh, I'm so sorry, I'll kiss your ass, Steve Hilton. I'll kiss your ass, Fox News. No, idiot Biden, you're supposed to be fighting them. You're supposed to be fighting them, not kissing their ass. And you kissed it and did it help? They called you a fascist anyway. You're never gonna understand this game. Biden is frozen in amber. He's 280 years old and he's like, I remember when we were bipartisan in the 1600s. Well, I really liked the Federalists and the Whigs and all those folks, okay? And the Bull Moose Party. You moron. Every time they see your weakness, they actually pounce on it and make it 10 times worse. And every time, like an idiot, you go out there and apologize to them and give them what they want. You're supposed to be fighting for us. but we're the only people saying it. The rest of the mainstream media is telling everybody how brave and strong the Democrats are and how they're gonna fight against this decision. They're not fighting anything, they've already surrendered.
They've already surrendered. In fact, when we come back from the break, we'll get to Pelosi and explain how, while on one hand, she's trying to present herself as a warrior for women's reproductive rights, in reality, behind the scenes, she has not only given up, she has empowered the anti-choice movement. We'll tell you how. Come right back.
All right, back on TYT. All right, new members that are American heroes: Chaz Bazar, Susie Mullen, and Michael Malbon. They just joined. Hit the join button below, join them, become a hero. Look, why a hero? Because you can tell, you watch this show for just one day. No, we don't care about the goddamn Republicans and the goddamn Democrats. Our job is to deliver the news. Isn't it amazing that everyone else picks a side? And they go, okay, I will report the news only from a right-wing perspective. And the Republicans are great, Trump is great, everything they do is great, stealing an election is great, all of you dying during COVID is great. Then you go to mainstream media, corporations are the best, bipartisanship where we all agree to rob you and give tax cuts to the rich is great, 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 great. And then you have some people on MSNBC, Democrats are the best, 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 best. Democrats never do anything wrong, never do anything wrong. Are you joking? And you guys call yourselves news? Okay, look, you could just look at us and look at them and you'll know instantly who's telling the truth and who isn't. Like others are like, mainstream media is like, don't ever watch independent news. Don't do it. Independent news is very dangerous. Oh my God, it'll get facts into your ear. And by the way, some of the independent news will get you insanity in your ear, okay? Both are possible and both are here, right? But mainstream media is like, shh, don't ever look at anybody else. Don't you dare. Why? Why are you so nervous? Let them look. Hey, look, on the right wing, they'll find insanity and it's easy to dismiss, right? And on the left, they'll actually find the truth. There's the problem. There's the problem. So you stay with us and we're gonna keep reporting the news as it actually is, no matter what. And we're not gonna be ass kissers for people in power like 98% of the media. Okay, Peter Hamby writes in with a poem, I believe, bipartisanship, oh yeah, the haiku. Bipartisanship, left and right wings flap as one to crap on women. And he put in brackets, that's why I was confused. I also believe the guy is relative to an actual FDNY volunteer. So that's the latest rumor, but we don't know if that's true. Okay, Case Rollins says, stay sharp, friends. Remember, just because something isn't on the table yet doesn't mean no one's cooking in the kitchen. Case, I'm not sure what you mean, but if you mean the Democrats, they ain't cooking up anything other than a surrender, okay? They're in the middle of it right now. But I'm not sure what you mean. British 32 says, hi, Cenk and Anna, great start of the show again. Just thought I would tell you my 13-year-old niece, and this is super sad, and by the way, we've been getting a lot of these comments now. My 13-year-old niece was raped by a 27-year-old and came to the UK for abortion because USA cost was monthly allowance for inhaler/medicine she needs. She now lives in the UK where it is free. Isn't that amazing? Even when abortion was legal. I mean, look at that sentence. Even when abortion was legal in America, because it's about to become illegal in half the country, people would go to other countries just to get health care because it would drive them out of house and home to get a procedure. No, this country's brutal and absurd. Benjamin GL writes, I'm gonna donate $20 to Jessica Cisneros in penance for pissing off Cenk with my sarcastic tweet this morning. Benjamin, I love that you're giving to Jessica Cisneros, and you should, and I encourage that. But I didn't realize it was sarcastic. Once I realized it was sarcastic, I loved it. God bless, thank you for supporting us. TYT.com/join for everybody who isn't on YouTube. For the guys on YouTube, it's so easy. Hit the join button below. We'll see you. right, back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys, and also Wendy Bayol. She just joined. We appreciate it. That's on YouTube by hitting the button, join button below. I'm going to read one comment from YouTube Super Chat. Brick House Mama 98 said, "My cousin was one of the Capitol police officers there on January 6th and struggles with it daily. The vigils I've seen at the homes don't come close." That's obviously true unless you're a host on Fox News or the president of the United States pretending to support Democrats. Okay, Anna.
All right, let's get to our next story.
Back when Democrats held majorities in the House and the Senate, 2009, when you were Speaker, President Obama was asked about codifying Roe versus Wade and said abortion's a moral and ethical issue and, quote, not the highest legislative priority. Do you think it was a mistake for him, for other presidents not to push harder when Democrats had the majority?
If I just may.
House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, who notoriously stated that America needs strong Republicans, is looking for a way to weasel her way out of the fact that Democrats are weak and ineffective.
The focus we have right now is an urgent one in order to try to improve this, what we're calling it, fake or draft decision, whatever it is. I think that this is a waste of time. The fact is, in 2009, we really did not have a pro-choice Democratic Party. I had to fight against some of the people who did not want to pass the Affordable Care Act because they were concerned that it might enable more freedom of choice. It really didn't go down that path.
I don't think that question is a waste of time. I think it's important for Democrats to learn from their own history and to learn from their own failures. And for her to specifically cite that Congress didn't have enough pro-choice Democrats is honestly not something I'm willing to buy. Democrats had a super majority in the beginning of Obama's administration. And I would venture to say, considering how harshly the Democratic Party, the establishment Democratic Party, fights against progressive lawmakers, I'm pretty sure they could have found the ability to sway some of the more conservative elements of their party. But if we're to take Pelosi's statement there at face value, if we're to just believe what she's saying, wouldn't she be against supporting anti-choice Democrats today? But that's not what's going on. Nancy Pelosi is strongly endorsing a conservative Democrat in Texas named Henry Cuellar, who was the only no vote on a House bill that would codify reproductive rights for women. So she's full of it. And I love how salty she gets the second someone tries to point to the failures of the Democratic Party and its leadership. Fact of the matter is, Margaret Brennan is not gonna do a decent job in saying exactly what needs to be said. So we'll say it here. Nancy Pelosi, along with the Democratic Party, has failed the American people. They failed their base, they failed their voters, they failed the people who have done the hard work on the ground to get out the vote. They have failed their small dollar donors. They are failures. When you look at a photo of Nancy Pelosi or Chuck Schumer or anyone else in Democratic leadership, you need to understand that they failed you. They will continue to fail you, and they will be furious with you if you point that out. But this is supposed to be a country that is democratic. We get to decide whether or not our elected leaders are representing our best interests. They're not representing our best interests. And I find it hilarious that she thinks that she's entitled to a round of applause, even though she has failed us in the past, she is failing us in the present, and she will certainly fail us in the future. That is the Democratic Party brand.
Okay, so it's amazing that she said, well, we just didn't have enough pro-choice Democrats at the time. That is almost certainly a lie. They had huge majorities. But okay, let's take it at face value, okay? Because I know everybody in Washington says, you can't say that about the speaker. You have to just kiss her ass and assume everything she says is gold and printed and never fact check it, okay? But okay, let's be Washington media and assume that she's telling the truth. Not enough pro-choice Democrats. The obvious follow-up question is, then why are you in the middle of campaigning right now for an anti-choice Democrat? I mean, it's the most obvious question of all time. Obviously, it didn't get asked. That's mainstream media. I mean, I asked my friends today who mainly watch mainstream media from back in the day. Most of them have never heard that Nancy Pelosi's fighting tooth and nail for an anti-choice legislator. He could break the tie with the Republicans and make sure that Roe's never codified. And she's dying to get him in. And later, when she loses the vote, she'll say, well, I didn't have enough pro-choice Democrats. But wait a minute, you're doing that right now. We're not talking about 2009, you're doing it right now. Why? On the other hand, Cuellar is also being investigated by the FBI. Wait, what? And is way more likely to lose the general election. So what's the catch? If you're a normie, if you're new and you just came out of like watching only MSNBC and CNN, you're like, this is such strange things. I've never heard this on cable news. Why would she be doing that? Well, Cuellar is running against Jessica Cisneros, who's a progressive. And Pelosi and Democratic leadership despise progressives because they're not corrupted. They're like, they're embarrassing us. We're supposed to take hordes of cash like Cuellar did, sometimes illegally, stuff it into our pockets and use it to accrue power. And the problem is that if we ever do anything for our constituents, then we can't find a good reason to fundraise off of them. So, this is, now that Roe is going to be overturned, Pelosi's probably ecstatic. She's gonna raise gobs of money from this, and she knows they're never gonna fix it. So she thinks, oh my God, I'm gonna raise money off of this for the next decade. You think she's not gonna be around? She's gonna be around. Okay, so, and the Queen in Washington, Pelosi, is to never be criticized. So whenever I do criticize her, the people like literally jump out of their seats. It happened at a panel in Politicon. David Frum, the loser who did so many losing presidential candidate campaigns, jumped out of his seat and said, how dare you? You have besmirched the reputation of Nancy Pelosi. She has passed so many things. I said, okay, great. We're on the panel together. It's all on tape. What did she pass? She passed Obamacare. Obamacare was written by a right-wing think tank, Heritage Foundation, mandates that you buy from private health insurance companies who donated to Obama and the rest of them, and especially the author of the bill, Max Baucus, and was originally championed by Mitt Romney. That's the only thing. I said, okay, good. Look, we can debate whether that was an important piece of right-wing legislation to pass or not. But give me one other thing she's passed. I mean, she's had like 20, 30, 40, 50 years. What has she passed? She couldn't even pass Roe with a codifying Roe with a super majority. Because she doesn't want to pass it. Neither did Obama, neither does Biden. All they care about is money, money, power, me. They're screwing you on purpose for their own power. That's who Nancy Pelosi is. Don't believe any of the liars in mainstream media who are currently all covering for her. Look, just one last thing on this. If Donald Trump this week had come out and said, you know what, I'm gonna be for a candidate that's pro-choice. He believes in the right to abortion and I'm endorsing him. What do you think would happen? You all know it. Even if you were brainwashed to the end of time by New York Times and thinking Democrats care about you, you all know what would happen. There'd be headlines everywhere. Donald Trump endorses pro-abortion candidate. Oh my God, what a hypocrisy, unbelievable, right? Pelosi does it, Clyburn does it. They're like, no, shh. Don't tell anyone. Don't tell anyone, because if you tell people, then they'll know that Pelosi's a fraud and doesn't mean anything she says. Shh. That would be reporting. It wouldn't be marketing for corporate Democrats. That's why almost no reporters doing it. By the way, I always give credit where credit is due. NBC News, of all people, had an article about this. So I'll give them credit, everyone else. Shh, that's the Queen, that's the Queen. We all lie for her.
And people have been noticeably furious with our show. I've noticed that even Majority Report's been getting some criticism because of the, I would argue, incredibly constructive feedback that we have for Democratic leadership. And the question I have for those people who are so hyper-focused on angry at Republicans, which I understand, I hate Republicans too, can't stand them. They're the ones who are fighting to strip our rights away from us. But our line of defense had a line of offense, but we have a line of defense, right, supposedly, and that's the Democratic Party. And they're failing. What do you want us to do? You want us to give them a pat on the back and enable their failures?
Yes, that's what they want.
Like them on failing us? Okay, I'm not interested in that. So if you're watching the show and you want to see a bunch of hosts who tell you pretty little lies so you can feel good about yourself, you're watching the wrong show. They have failed you. It's done. It's over. They failed you. For me, this issue was the final issue. It's the nail in the coffin for Democratic leadership for me. Over. It's done. Okay? I'm not interested in enabling them. They've had way too many chances. And you're absolutely right, Cenk. They see this not as a tragedy in the country, not as a tragedy for all the women who are likely going to die because they're still going to try to get an abortion, likely an illegal abortion, an abortion that might even kill them. They don't see that as they see this as a moment of celebration. They're not saying it to you, but their actions would prove otherwise.
Look, guys.
They're out there shilling for, hold on, I'm not done. Shilling for Henry Cuellar, okay? And then they're also doing what? Collecting the bucks, buku bucks. This is great. It's all about the fundraising for them. It has been about the money and nothing more ever since the Supreme Court opened the floodgates and allowed unlimited campaign contributions into the coffers of our politicians, yes, including the Democratic Party. Ever since that happened, the Democratic Party has quickly morphed into the Republican Party substantively. Rhetorically, they're a little different, rhetorically. But I would ask you, when it comes to substantive, when it comes to bread and butter issues, that's really that different from the Republican Party. I mean, it's amazing how they're getting pats on the back as we speak, because, oh, look at the wonderful bipartisan way in which Congress has allocated billions of dollars in military spending for Ukraine. Isn't it so wonderful? Yeah, it's because they have the same defense contractor donors, you idiots. That's why.
Okay, so first of all, when they are theoretically on our side rhetorically, as Anna pointed out, which some Democrats brag about, like, hey, we say the right words. Well, that's just marketing. Your votes and what you pass and don't pass are the only thing that matters. Like, hey, we have good marketing for our lies is not a winning campaign slogan. Although it is in Washington. They think, oh, they're so good at lying. Give them A pluses, give them A pluses. Oh, and they raise so much money. They're so credible, right? If you're good at lying, you're credible in Washington. It's just incredible. All right, but I want to go to Chuck Schumer real quick, guys. So Chuck Schumer, right now there's good progressive groups. They mean well. They're trying to pressure Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski to override the filibuster, because if the two Republicans join the Democrats, you won't even need Manchin or even necessarily Sinema, and get rid of the filibuster and actually codify Roe. It's actually doable, right? Chuck Schumer isn't going to even bring that up for a vote. So what are we wasting our time for? Why are you pressuring Murkowski and Collins on a vote that isn't even going to happen because Chuck Schumer decided he didn't want to embarrass Manchin and Sinema? That protecting his corrupt colleagues was more important than protecting women's rights. So for the Democratic cheerleaders in the audience who say, like, if you just cheer louder for the Democrats and Pelosi and Schumer and Biden, we'll win. How would we win? He's not even going to introduce the vote. We have absolutely no chance of winning. Is that because I didn't cheer loud enough for Schumer? Or is that because Schumer decided he's not going to have the vote? What are you on me for? What are you go get ask Schumer for the vote? No, your idea is, no, don't ask Schumer for the vote. Cheerlead him not even voting on this issue and giving up preemptively. How would that help you codify Roe so we could have choice in this country? You're agreeing to give up your rights because a Democrat is doing it? Look, man, you'll never be able to explain that to anybody. The only reason that any actual human being believes that is because, man, their brain has been thoroughly washed by mainstream media. It doesn't matter how much the Democrats screw you. It doesn't matter that they never pass any bills. It doesn't matter that they lie in every campaign. And it doesn't matter that they do the same exact thing as Republicans. You have to support the Democrats. Well, okay, to each his own, but it's our policy funeral. None of our policies are going to pass. Super last thing. Look, you can tell who's right and who's wrong. If you're one of those skeptical, the Democrats. Did it work? Did it work? Did it pass? Okay, you just want to cheer louder and you want us to do propaganda and lies on their behalf? Okay, just think about this, guys. I said that $15 minimum wage wouldn't pass because the Democrats don't actually want it. Everybody in Washington said that it was scandalous, it was an outrageous claim. Pelosi, Schumer, Biden, they all said it's easily going to pass. It didn't pass. You know why? Not just the Republicans. 8, not 2, 8 Democrats voted against it in the Senate. They never intended to pass it. They knew they didn't have the votes, and that their Democratic colleagues were going to join the Republicans in making sure that you had lower wages. I was right. Everyone in Washington was wrong. And by the way, if you say, oh yeah, you cherry picked, or whatever excuse you make for failures, okay, then I'll tell you in the future, okay? I'll tell you right now. There's a 0% chance they're going to codify Roe. They're not even going to try. So but please do your own research. See if Chuck Schumer calls the filibuster vote. Then you'll know, who was right? Were we right? Or were we wrong? And if we had just kissed Schumer and Pelosi's ass more, that they somehow would have miraculously won without a vote. There are verifiable facts in the world. So a lot of you have gotten free and broken of those chains, but a lot of you live in a completely alternate reality, just like the Trump supporters, and you don't even know it. You don't, just like the right wing doesn't realize they've been brainwashed. Look into actual facts. They're not even going to vote on it. The whole thing is theater. Everyone, including the so-called reporters, are lying to you. They'll tell you that they're not going to vote on it, but all the headlines are Democrats fight hard. Democrats are unbelievable, they're pro-choice, while they're actually campaigning for an anti-choice candidate. The lies are unreal.
All right, we're going to take a quick break and we'll be back with more news.
All right, back on TYT. I'm gonna do one super chat and then I'll go back up to the members. Hello, somebody said, Cenk, I've been giving the rebellion back since the beginning. I assume that we'll be going after anti-choice square. Of course, so literally today, we're about to send a max check to Jessica Cisneros. So we'll do all we can, as we always do, and not just root for the good guys, but actually try to help them win. Rebellion PAC's also going to give to Jamie McLeod Skinner, who's also in a really important and winnable race in Oregon against one of the most conservative Democrats in the country, Kurt Schrader. Of course, Kurt Schrader, endorsed by all Democratic leadership. He almost single-handedly killed a bill that would have lowered drug prices. God, Democratic leadership loves corruption. Everything we say is verifiable. You could look it up online and you will see that it's absolutely true. While they're pretending to lower drug prices, they're helping Schrader win to make sure they don't lower drug prices, because they all take collectively through the years literally billions of dollars from those drug companies. And everyone in mainstream media tells you, no, that's not corruption. They're just doing it for general charity, and the votes are not connected to the billions of dollars, not at all. The minute you hear it, you realize, oh my God, mainstream media has been lying to me my whole life. Obviously the votes are connected. How come they never, ever, ever, ever say it while covering politics? Okay, now let's go to Twitch. Server Tim says, your body is mine. That covered it, referring to the first video from the guy wearing the fire department hat. That is the Republican ideology. And Republicans love to cry. And that's another good reason to watch us. We make Republicans cry all the time. We point out simple facts. They're like, oh, yes, no, you can't say that. Because you know why? They're used to soft media and soft Democrats. So when we actually say, look, you guys are monsters. You hate the idea of freedom and you want to use women as chattel. They're like, oh, you're not supposed to point that out. Mommy, this isn't fair. The media is usually our bitches. We steamroll. The Democrats say, help us behind the scenes. These guys are actually fighting us. All over social media. Every time we hit them. When Anna did that rant against the Democrats and how they're useless on the first day, The right-wing media was all over. They're like, can you believe this woman is fighting back against us? It is an outrage. They genuinely believe it's outrageous to ever fight them because they've never seen it before in America. It's just this country is crazy. Rubert says Pelosi doesn't care that she's not affected by it, but can fundraise off of it. Look, I know I'm talking too much. I should let you guys do the comments. But guys, you have no idea how ecstatic Democratic leadership is right now because they see the polling that this helps them in elections. But most importantly, they're like the money, 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 money. They hit the jackpot. They're like, perfect, we never ever solve it. This is why the Republicans are mad. They're like, damn it, we were doing that thing where we raised the money and never solved it. Now they win for their side and the Democrats are ecstatic because they're gonna raise money off it. We'll be back. All right, back on TYT, checking Anna with you guys. Anna's got more.
Let's do it.
My only question is, going back to Schumer, why don't you get a bipartisan vote? This is what Democrats don't understand. They don't understand. So you can't get 100% of what you want. You can't get 80% of what you want. Maybe get 60% of what you want so you can say.
Joe Scarborough is about to give Democrats a losing strategy, which they've already tried and have lost with repeatedly.
We have a bipartisan bill, right? It's just like the Electoral Count Act, which desperately needs to be passed. Democratic leaders, no, we're not going to do it because we can't get the whole loaf. It's time these people wake up. Take the wins you can get. And if you got a bipartisan bill on abortion rights, you take it, even if it's 60% of what you want. Because then you can say, we have a bipartisan group of senators, a bipartisan majority saying that what the Supreme Court's thinking about doing is wrong.
MSNBC's Joe Scarborough, along with other, I guess, Democrat-leaning political pundits, happen to be some of the dumbest people I have ever encountered in this space. And I mean that with my whole being. Because this guy there in his air-conditioned fancy studio, completely oblivious to the fact that we're dealing with a right wing in America that not only wants to ban women's reproductive rights, their right to an abortion, but they don't even want to make an exception in most cases when it comes to incest, when it comes to rape. Wants to Democrats a bipartisan bill, at least some reproductive rights protected. Is he living in the same country? Apparently not. Apparently I don't know if he's on drugs when he does the show. I don't know if he's just super lazy and doesn't bother paying attention to what's happening in Congress. But I want to remind him of just one short video featuring Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell and what he said is on his agenda during the Biden administration. Let's watch that.
100% of my focus is on stopping this new administration.
100% of my focus is stopping Joe Biden's administration, meaning serving as an obstructionist, as he did during the Obama years, to anything the Democratic Party wants to do today. That is a video from 2021. I know Joe Scarborough covered it. Is he stupid? Did he forget? Does he genuinely think that Democrats moving further to the right to appease the American Taliban in this country is somehow going to translate into women regaining their reproductive rights? Is that really what he thinks? Because I don't believe that he actually thinks that. And if he does, he is genuinely one of the dumbest people on television.
Well, I have other reasons why he's dumb too, but he's mainly disingenuous, in my opinion. So first of all, he says take the win, but wait, Joe, which win? Because the bill you're referring to, even if you compromise with Murkowski and Collins, only gets to 52 votes, and they're not willing to overturn the filibuster. In fact, Chuck Schumer's not even going to vote on it, so that has no chance of passage. Zero. That's not a conjecture. That is just a fact of legislative procedure, and Joe Scarborough does know that. So what win are you referring to? If you said, hey, they're going to codify Roe, but there's going to be some provisions you don't like, and so take the 60%, I would seriously consider that, because then at least we would guarantee abortion rights in the country, most importantly, protect the right of women to make the choice, and maybe there's some painful compromise. But there is no such bill, and it has no chance of passing. So what do you, honestly, if you're not a liar, Joe Scarborough, what are you referring to? And so my guess is he'll fall back on, well, it's true, it won't pass and it won't change anything, but it'll give the appearance of bipartisanship. And how would that help? Because they think, oh no, because the American people love things that are bipartisan. Do they? Do you think the MAGA crowd would be like, oh, the Republicans worked with Democrats, that was bipartisan. Oh, I really like that, I will now vote for them. No, if the Republicans ever work with Democrats, MAGA would rip their heads off. That's why Mitch McConnell says, oh no, we will never work with Democrats. You don't know that phenomenon? Who's rewarding bipartisanship? No, you're talking about the 1990s where you guys would pass because he was in Congress as a Republican, you guys would pass all these bills, including, by the way, all the way through the Trump era, where they would do tax cuts for the rich and they would call it bipartisan. And then the media, like Scarborough, would then come out and do propaganda and go, oh, look, everybody agrees that the rich should get more. Everybody agrees, it's bipartisan. In this case and in this world, bipartisan doesn't help you at all. But it does, but this is important, guys, but it would help Murkowski and Collins, who are Republicans, pretend they're pro-choice while knowing that the bill's never gonna pass. So in fact, Joe Scarborough, who is a Republican, but now is on MSNBC, so he's considered left wing. In Washington, they're jokes, right? He says, help my Republican friends do marketing. No, Joe, we're not gonna do that. But don't worry, Joe, none of the Democrats in Washington are gonna listen to us anyway, okay? They hate progressives, they'll love what you said. Oh, help the Republicans do marketing and not actually pass anything? They're like, oh, why didn't somebody tell us this before? They're gonna love your idea. In fact, they're actually in the middle of doing it right now, so I don't know what you're yelling and screaming about. And lastly, on all the idea of, you guys, progressives just want the whole loaf, they're so unreasonable and practical. That is one of the top brainwashing methods that mainstream media uses to make sure they protect corporate Democrats in Democratic primaries. So I ask you, Joe, where's the 60% on child tax credit, on paid family leave, on lower drug prices, on minimum, on any
voting
topic?
rights.
Voting rights.
Voting rights. Where are the voting rights? Where are they? Where's police reform? Where's all of that?
None of it. There's no 60%. There's no middling proposal. There's none of it, okay? So the only thing that has some counter proposal was, they said out of the thousands of drugs that are in the country that are all like killing us because we can't afford it, like literally killing us, the corporate Democrats proposed that they would limit prices on 5 of them. 5 out of thousands. Why? Because those 5 are unimportant and it's marketing. So then Joe Scarborough can come back out and go, they did a bipartisan agreement, it's amazing. Amazing, the prices are lower now on drugs. For 5 drugs, but not the thousands of others. Okay, so is that the 60% you're referring to, Joe lying Scarborough? By the way, that bitch, when I was on MSNBC, cried to mommy and asked the head of MSNBC to get me to stop criticizing him because his feelings were hurt.
Oh, poor Joe Scarborough. Oh, you go whine to mommy and daddy. Was Cenk being very mean to you?
I was in the middle of lying when Cenk said things that were true. Cenk's not allowed to say things that are true. This is corporate media. Why did you let him say things that are true? He ruined my lie.
Thing for Joe Scarborough, a former Republican member of Congress, to give unsolicited advice to the Democratic Party. But it's something entirely different for the Democratic Party to take that advice. And I just want to know, they have taken that advice, and it wasn't today, it wasn't yesterday. They've been using that strategy time now, regardless of what their own voters want, regardless of what their base wants. And the reason why they do it, it always goes back to the money. They'll give you all sorts of excuses. They'll talk about the parliamentarian, they'll talk about the filibuster, they'll talk about, oh, it's the moderates in our party, what could we do? But there's always a convenient excuse to help provide cover for the fact that they just happen to share the same corporate donors as the Republican Party. That's it. They're all friends. Same mutuals. That is priority number one for the Democratic Party. And for anyone who thinks, well, I don't know, maybe it's just that the Democrats are weak, maybe they're a little spineless and maybe we need to give them a little more confidence, a little more courage. Oh, no. They're not weak and they're not spineless. And we've seen the way that they're able to fight and play politics when it comes to progressives within their ranks. So we know that they have the capability to fight. It's just that they'll never fight unless it's someone who's going against their corporate donors.
Okay, to give you a perfect sense of that last point here, Joe Scarborough certainly stopped being a Republican. I believe he switched to being a Democrat during the Trump years. Do you know how many of his positions he changed? None, because they're the same positions, whether you're a corporate Republican or a corporate Democrat. Okay, so then you tell me, how's the Democratic Party any different than the Republican Party? The whole thing's a joke, man. And they pay people like Scarborough a lot of money to do marketing on their behalf. Not the actual news, not anywhere near it. No facts at all. Okay, we gotta take another break here. Let's take a break, and when we come back, we have more amazing stories for you guys, including, by the way, Trump thinking about turning on Cawthorn, and you're gonna love the reason why he's considering turning on Cawthorn. We'll be back.
The concept of the Young Turks means the audience, they are the Young Turks. They are the go-getters. They are the ones making the emphatic change happen in their local community. The reality is that we've always, young and the not so young, we've always cared about news. But when you do not see the messengers of the news look like you, when they do not share your experiences, exposures, and environment, and there's a disconnect between you and the news. I lecture in mass communications. One thing I tell all of my students, there is no such thing as non-biased news. It never has been. Non-biased news has always been an illusion. Let's go back to the 60s and 70s, where people would say that was the purity of non-biased news. News has a segment. That segment has a time. That time, you must do your story and be finished. That means the producer, the writer, the orator has to take out what they don't think is important and only leave in what they believe is important. They have a limited time to tell the story. They do not have time to tell everybody's version or everybody's side. And they get to choose the facts that they bring to you, as well as the nuance, which really is a word for opinion, that they bring to you, the context they bring to you. So we've always had a level of bias in news. Here's the issue. The issue is to not deceive individuals as if you don't have some level of opinion with your news commentary. And that's what TYT has never done. They've always been authentic in their approach to progressive ideology and their news analysis and political breakdown. And I think that's how you actually win the heart and soul of individuals who are consuming information from you, because now they see themselves in you.
This is where it all began for many elected progressive leaders. The Young Turks was one of the few media outlets to cover the races of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Jamal Bowman, Cori Bush, Rashida Tlaib, and many, many more. We know a great majority of the country is actually progressive, and TYT is here to amplify these issues so that we can have better policies that a majority of the country actually supports. We want to drive positive change, and we've been doing that for 20 years here. That's why we're launching Canvas 2022, a campaign to get out the vote and amplify progressive candidates, the progressive agenda, and their primary races. The midterm elections are fast approaching, and we know mainstream media won't cover progressive voices, but because the TYT audience is too strong, we can make a difference in the midterm elections to help progressives get elected and make sure our priorities are heard. Support our mission to drive positive change. Visit tyt.com/canvas2022.
There is so much heinous news out there. That's why we've got to laugh, not to cry. So join me, Francesca Fiorentini, and some of my progressive friends, comedians, actors, experts, and activists, as we deliver an hour of laughter and analysis every week on my podcast, The Bituation Room. The Bituation Room is an invitation for all of us to take ourselves a little bit less seriously while still giving you some concrete ideas for action. New episodes are available every single week, so join the Frantifa and listen to The Bituation Room on Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your TYT network podcasts. And make sure to subscribe and give the show 5 stars, because I like stars.
All right, back on TYT, Cenk, Anna, and Winston Walrus. Winston just joined, thank you, we appreciate it. Hit the join button below on YouTube. Or if you're not on YouTube, tyt.com/join, just as easy. By the way, that way you get to participate in Food for Thought trivia. We do it every Friday, and people who get the answer right get a $100 free gift card, true gift card. You don't have to put your credit card information in or anything. Find out more at tyt.com/food. All right, Anna.
Trump's former defense secretary, Mark Esper, is out there trying to sell his book. And of course, his book has to do with his time within the Trump administration. And he's come out with some new revelations. In fact, during a recent interview on 60 Minutes, he cited a proposal to take military action against Venezuela, meaning Trump wanted to do that, which isn't that surprising, to strike Iran, also not that surprising. And at one point, somebody proposed we blockade Cuba. Esper said such ideas would occur at various times, certainly the last year of the administration. Now, all of that is unsurprising, and to be quite honest with you, I wouldn't be surprised if it was a Democratic president wanting those things. But let's go to some of the newer things that we've learned. So he says, quote, these ideas would happen, it seemed, every few weeks. Something like this would come up and we'd have to swat him down. And then we learned about what Trump wanted to do in Mexico. Esper's interview follows a series of revelatory claims he makes about his time in the Trump administration, including exploring the possibility of secretly launching missiles into Mexico and asking whether people protesting the death of George Floyd could be shot in the leg. Now, we talked about the proposal by Trump in response to the George Floyd protesters. So that's not really a new piece of news, but let's explore what Trump wanted to do in Mexico a little further. He actually elaborated on this during an interview this morning. Let's take a quick look.
You also wrote that President Trump asked the military if he could shoot missiles into Mexico. And you basically explained to him that that's illegal, it's an act of war. Right. And he said, well, we'll shoot those missiles at cartels and drug houses. When you told him that, what was his response?
Well, look, yeah, he wanted to shoot at drug labs. And as I say, I get it, right? We all are troubled by drugs in America. He was trying to find a way to go after this, but there are right ways to do it and wrong ways to do it. And when I said, no, you can't, it would be an act of war, illegal. He said, well, look, nobody will know. They just won't find out.
Wow.
Nobody would know, they just won't find out. That is the brain of a child who led this country and is very likely to lead it again in 2024. But before I get to the entirety of Trump's response to all of these allegations, I just want to give you a response to the Mexico allegation. In response to Esper's claim that he'd pushed back on Trump's suggestion that the US use missiles to destroy drug labs in Mexico, Trump responded, no comment, meaning it's definitely true.
Yeah,
Cenk.
That's exactly right. I was just gonna bring up the same thing because on everything else, he's like, fake news, no way, didn't say it, right? On bombing our neighbor Mexico and starting a war with Mexico, he's like, no comment. And by the way, he's not entirely wrong. Wait, what do you mean? Should we have started a war with Mexico? No, we should not have done that. But the reason why he's not backing away from that is, I bet you the overwhelming majority of Republicans would get animated by that, would love that, and are more likely to vote for him if they hear that story. Oh, he wanted to bomb the Mexicans and kill a bunch of them and maybe start a war with Mexico, our neighbor. Oh, that sounds so good for Republicans.
Yeah, I'm sure it does. Yeah, I'm sure it does. Let's destabilize more countries. Let's create more refugees and then whine when people are seeking refuge in our country. Let's do that. We've got a great track record of that.
Yeah, but you know the right wing would like it, and so that's why he's not backing away from it. I don't think that hurt at all. Look, a little bit later, we're going to get to Esper's 4 no's, the 4 things they had to make sure that the Mad King would not do while he was in office, because everyone knew that the president was insane. And we might reelect him. This country is in so much trouble.
So Trump mostly denied everything with the exception of the Mexico allegations. Trump, in fact, lost it in a lot of his responses to 60 Minutes. They wanted to seek comment from Trump. He says Mark Esper was a stiff who was desperate not to lose his job. I actually do believe that. He would do anything I wanted. That's why I called him Yesper. He was a lightweight and a figurehead, and I realized it very early on. And to be honest with you, that is the exact kind of reaction or response from Trump that I think ends up working, because it takes credibility away from Mark Esper. And is anyone really going to deny that Mark Esper was looking out for Mark Esper? I mean, he was serving in the Trump administration, and he decided to sit on so much of this information for when he would be able to sell books. So do I deny that Mark Esper is looking out for Mark Esper? No, I don't deny it. I think that Mark Esper is also a terrible person. He's looking out for his own profit motives. But at the same time, I definitely believe that Donald Trump wanted to do some of these horrendous things because Trump would actually vocally say he wanted to do horrendous things. For instance, he also said that Esper was so ineffective that Trump had to run the military himself, which is... Do not believe that for a second. Trump denied.
How? Can I just say, Anna, I know. How would he even run the military? Somebody just ask him a question like,
I know how to run the military.
I know it better than anyone.
Military runner. I know how to tell the generals to do this strike and that strike, and maybe you do a drone strike, and maybe we do the mother of all bombs. I run the military. I'm the best. That's how he would run the military. Disaster.
Sir, where would you move those battalions? I don't know. I'll tell you what, I'm the best at battalioning. Okay, I've never lost a battalion, never lost one. I would say, go there, or maybe there, okay? I was running the military. Right-wingers actually believe it. I mean, they're just there. We live in Alice in Wonderland, upside down world. All right, sorry, I didn't keep going.
So in terms of other denials, this one I found pretty hilarious. Trump denied that he wanted to evoke the Insurrection Act, despite having said on June 2020 that he would, quote, deploy the United States military if state governors didn't increase their use of force to quell protests. In fact, I remember covering that when it happened, Cenk.
So, but that's the Insurrection Act. And so he's like, I didn't say the exact quote that I said. Didn't say it. I said it, but it didn't say it. And MAGA's like, oh yeah, he said it but didn't say it. Yeah, that makes sense.
Nailed it.
And by the way, Esper also said Trump didn't even know what the Insurrection Act was. He thought that Esper had taken it away from him. And Esper had to explain, no, sir, it's always existed. It's from a long, long time ago. And it's a core principle of democracy that you don't use the military against our own citizens. Why'd you take it away from me? Okay, an absolute ignoramus. Can I get to the 4 no's?
Go ahead.
Yeah, so Esper said, and remember guys, Esper was so right wing, Trump picked him, and he picked him late in his administration. They do vetting of these guys, and they thought, okay, Esper is such a maniac right winger, he'll do whatever Trump says. And by the way, that's why they nicknamed him Esper. And even Esper was like, no, that guy's a lunatic. What are we doing? Okay. So him and Mark Milley, the head of the Joint Chiefs, had 4 no's. One was no strategic retreats because they were worried that he was going to betray our allies and say, okay, I'm taking all the troops out of South Korea and North Korea. You can take it anytime you want, right? So they wanted to make sure he didn't do that. No unnecessary wars, because at the end they were really worried in the last 6 months that if he was losing in the polls, he was just going to start bombing random countries, Iran, Mexico, Venezuela, just to start a war so he'll win re-election. So they were trying super hard to make sure he didn't start a war. Remember, MAGA thinks that Trump is anti-war. He was thinking of starting one for his own political benefit, for 1 or 2 points politically, okay? No politicization of the military and no misuse of the military. Why? Because they all knew that Trump was considering using the military to, inside the United States, to end democracy. His own guys knew that he was insane, was not in favor of democracy, and would do anything for his own benefit, including starting unnecessary wars or helping our enemies. That's the person Donald Trump is. No morality, no intelligence, absolutely craven. That's why Republican voters love him.
Yep. And finally, just one more line from Trump and his response to all of this. This is fake news. The fact is, I didn't need to invoke the act and never did. No, you never did because you received surprisingly successful pushback within your own administration. But he would have absolutely used the Insurrection Act to quell protests. He wanted to do it, he was vocal about it at the time. That's just who he is. And when he wasn't able to do it, what did he do, Cenk? What was plan B for Donald Trump? What was plan B for Bunker Boy? To go run into the White House bumper for safety.
Oh, they're protesting me, why don't you shoot them? They're scaring me. There was an article just like 10 days ago where, and it sounds like a joke, but it isn't, that Trump was actually afraid of flying vegetables. And what? I know, it's hilarious. At his speeches, they had to do precautions because he's really worried that somebody was gonna throw tomato, okay? And they're like, sir, we'll obviously take precautions around that, obviously, right? We don't want you to get hit by that. But it's not actually it's not a lethal threat, obviously. He's like, what if they throw pineapples? I'm not kidding. He said that, okay.
That'd be pretty sweet.
Okay, well, the pineapple's
little
sweet.
tropical flair, in your activism, I'm into it.
So he's deathly afraid.
He'd be Dole whipped.
Oh, okay. Anyways, no, he's deathly afraid of everything because he's an incredible coward. Again, another reason why Republican voters love him, because they all live in fear. Like, oh, Mexicans, foreigners, can we shoot them? I'm gonna go to my bunker. So that's how the typical Republican mentality. And so the fact that he's unintelligent, deathly afraid of everything around him, and has no morals is perfect for the Republican voter. That's why they stay loyal to him through thick and thin. None of this will change their opinion. If anything, they'll double down. Oh, he was threatening to murder people who don't agree with him. The free speech advocates love it. Cancel culture, let's cancel their lives, yay! Republicans, they're never gonna make sense. So it is what it is.
All right, well, why don't we get to our next story, something completely different in the news today.
Oh God, thank you for the follow, Future Roll Call, or Chloe, yeah. Okay, well now there's an officer in here just trying to join the stream.
You winning?
Okay, I don't know if you guys heard that. I hope you didn't. But basically, I'm just gonna act like they're not here because that's easier.
The The footage that you just watched was from the Twitch stream of a transgender Twitch streamer by the name of Wynn. Wynn is a 16-year-old trans girl who was unfortunately confronted by police as she was streaming Minecraft. Now, she unfortunately lives in a overzealous religious state like Tennessee, where they've passed all sorts of draconian anti-transgender laws. We'll get to those details in just a second. But the police entered her room to confront her about allegedly being truant from school. And the reason why she was truant is because the school told her that they no longer wanted her to show up for in-person learning because she's transgender and because she wants to use the restroom that she identifies with. And so since they don't want her showing up to school, they gave her the option of online learning, and she doesn't want online learning. She believes, and I agree with her, that she has the right to go to school just like her peers, just like her other classmates. Now, the story gets even worse because the cops showed up to basically take her away and put her in foster care, although she has parents and doesn't need to be in foster care. Wynn stated that she was pressured to do online school rather than attend in person, and that she has refused to go to the online school and thus has been considered truant. I consider it being denied an education, though it legally isn't considered as such, so that's why the judge considered me truant, Wynn said. Other students also took an online school option, but she was the only one she knew of that was pressured heavily to stay home, she said. She also believes that the state is forcing her into the foster care system. Honestly, it doesn't matter what she believes. They absolutely are forcing her into the foster care system because of new laws in Tennessee that essentially prevents parents from making gender affirming healthcare available to their children, meaning they are punishing parents who are actually loving and supportive parents. That is what the state of Tennessee is currently doing. We've talked about Texas doing the same thing. I want to give Wynn more opportunity to share her perspective before I open this up to Cenk. So let's take a quick look at the final video.
I love streaming, and it's honestly one of the only things in life that I really enjoy. And they're trying to put me into foster care where I can't even do that. How's everything going in court? It's over. They're sending me to foster care. I am probably but I'm not. I refuse to go to foster care. I want to go to school. I want to get an education. So I'm hoping I can just explain that to the DCS people, and then I'll be able to get an education instead of being forced out of my house. Instead of being without parents. I was already adopted once. I don't need to be adopted again. I just need to be able to go to school. Basically, I'm just worried I'd get abused. So I'm just stressed out. Especially because I'm trans. There's a chance that anyone who would adopt me would be insanely transphobic. Because I've heard so many horror stories. But I don't know why, but I was thinking they just say, hey, you can go to school. Instead of trying to say, hey, we're gonna ruin your life. I don't understand why the state of Tennessee would rather ruin a child's life than just let her go to school.
And I think it's important to tell you all what happened after the first video that we showed you. She says, the police forced me to turn around in my chair and then acted very angry with me, with an officer even saying that he didn't see any tears and got mad at me for crying as I had tears running down my face. They made me leave my room and had an officer search it. After that, they told me I shouldn't have put the chair against my door and then took my door off its hinges. They asked if I was suicidal. I said no. And then they left. They came back later that day, she said, to watch her get into the caseworker's car to be taken to foster care. So Cenk, this is what the American Taliban is spending its time doing. Torturing transgender youth, torturing and tormenting parents who are supportive of transgender youth, stripping rights away from women so they have no agency or autonomy. This is what they do. And in the meantime, they'll point fingers at the Taliban in the Middle East and moralize about how terrible they are to women, when in reality, we have our own fundamentalists large and in charge in this country, stripping rights away from people and terrorizing people who are just trying to live their lives peacefully.
Yeah, what you just saw there were the jackbooted thugs of the government coming to take your kids. Now, the right wing have said words like that for decades here, based on absolutely nothing. I don't even know what they're referring to. Jackbooted thugs of the government to do what? Sometimes they'll say, "Oh, take my guns away." Literally never happened, right? In our entire lives. And then they'll say, "Oh, they're coming for your kids." To do what? Oh, maybe teach them that the slaveholders were racist. Ooh, and then they're threatening to teach them science and math and get them educated. But here it is, actual thugs of the big government saying, "I'm gonna take your kids away because they're trans and the school's discriminating against them, and you guys won't bow your heads and agree to the discrimination. So that's it. We're taking them away, we're gonna bring them to foster care." By the way, you saw her. They want her to go to a boys' bathroom in high school. How do you think that's gonna turn out? And then they're gonna put her in foster care. How do you think that's gonna turn out? You think that they're gonna find a comforting environment in Tennessee? It's not impossible. There's good people, wonderful people in Tennessee. There's also terrible people in Tennessee. Now, that's generically true of everywhere, first of all. Second of all, it's a right-wing state, so the right wing lacks morals in this country. They hate freedom. They love big government, controlling women's lives, destroying families like this one.
Breaking families apart.
Yeah.
Yep.
But on top of that, I know for a fact how horrible Tennessee can be because of Eli Fritchley. I mean, look, there's tons of these cases, but we covered it. It was heartbreaking. 12-year-old kid go to school, and he was gay. Not that he ever talked about it, but people assumed it because of what he wore, etc. And they bullied him mercilessly. You're going to hell. God hates you. You're terrible for who you are. You're immoral. Until he committed suicide. Sweet little 12-year-old boy. That's what they do in Tennessee. That's what the right wing does in this country. Oh, God created you a certain way? What the hell does God know? I'm gonna bully you anyway for being who you are. Oh, by the way, I'm doing this for freedom. No, you're not. You're the oppressors. You're the tyrants. You love big government as long as big government works to oppress people you don't like or that don't look like you. The right wing in this country is disgusting and hates freedom.
So update on Wynn, and it's a somewhat positive update, but not positive enough to give me any calm. So she says that she's doing a little better. The plan now is to try getting a new court date for the foster care people to tell a judge that I don't need to be in foster care in hopes that I can be officially released from DCS today, Wynn said. And the school has agreed to let her attend summer school to catch up in time for the second semester of 11th grade next year. So she's behind through no fault of her own. She's behind because the school had initially decided to treat her like a second-class citizen and essentially ban her from in-person learning, forcing her to do online learning, which, by the way, has its own challenges. Not everyone is able to learn through online learning. And they didn't really give her an option. But again, like the thing that really gets to me, Cenk, is ripping families apart like this. Let's just call it what it is. The right wing loves tearing families apart. They love doing it at the border when desperate asylum seekers are just trying to get their kids to safety, trying to get their kids away from violence and death. They'll take the kids away. In some cases, they even place those children with American families and never even kept track of where their parents ended up. Remember that?
Yeah.
Oh, the right wing loves it. They love ripping families apart. That is what right wing family values in America really means. That is what it really means. Don't make a mistake about it.
Yeah, I mean, look, in the old days, they say, well, Cenk, you can't say who's more immoral. You guys are just having policy differences. Really? No, now the policy differences are, we hate you and we'll rip you away from your parents, or we'll control your bodies, and you're not allowed to control your own body. We're gonna take away your freedom. And they break up families on the regular. And oh, by the way, family values. Our dear leader, our president, the guy we look up to, had sex with mistresses and strippers and porn stars while his wife was pregnant. And he And it's awesome that he did that. He's so great for having sex with porn stars and cheating on his wife. Oh, and he likes his daughter and says, oh, he'd date her if he could. Oh, he was with Jeffrey Epstein and said, yeah, Jeffrey Epstein likes him young. Oh, he knew that Epstein, his friend, was a child molester. Roy Moore, child molester. Dennis Hastert, child molester. These are all facts. And they're like, oh, we love it. Well, wait a minute. If that's your definition of family values, and it is, then you actually have no morality at all. You have nothing to hang your hat on. So yeah, right wing. They're the immoral people in this country, and they have a good way of, identifying themselves. If somebody tells you're a Republican, be really careful. They are probably deeply immoral.
They're probably scheming ways to rip your family apart.
Yeah.
It's a fun little hobby for them. Anyway, we got to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll talk about how Donald Trump reconsidering his endorsement of Madison Cawthorn. I think the Madison Cawthorn story, as fun and salacious as it is on the surface, is a teachable moment for Democratic voters. I'll explain why when we come back.
All right, back on TYT. Let's start with one super chat here. Ben Barreto wrote in, isn't it amazing how a Republican brain can cartwheel to see those peaceful protesters as rioters and the actual January 6th rioters and murderers as peaceful DC tourists just out for a weekend stroll? It is mind-boggling. Now, Ben, you're 100% right about that. It is amazing. The power of brainwashing is the most powerful thing you'll ever see, right? The right-wing media suggests it, they instantly believe it. And that's a scary thing about humans. But let's not be too smug. Tons of Democrats, you'll tell them Nancy Pelosi is campaigning for an anti-choice legislator, and they'll tell you that's why she's pro-choice. But how can you possibly believe that? Well, she's a Democratic leader, and she says she's pro-choice. That's why she's got to get more anti-choice legislators elected. Oh, Mitch McConnell took like $1 billion from corporate PACs and donations. Evil sellout. Nancy Pelosi also took $1 billion from the same donors. No, totally innocent. No. Angel. No, that money doesn't affect her. She has like an immunity shield. It doesn't affect her at all. It's just McConnell and the Republicans that are evil. But when our corporate Democrats, which are almost all of them, take the money and they seem to vote with their donors, it didn't really happen. I think maybe it did, okay? So apparently all of us are susceptible to the propaganda that we see 24/7, both in right-wing media and corporate media. All right, now I'm gonna go to our members. Dragon with a Girl Tattoo says about the trans girl we just showed, she's very brave, I would have been hysterical. Yeah, it's really scary when you're a 16-year-old and the cops show up in your bedroom. Dirge says Trump has had to denounce almost every appointee as a loser, and his supporters still think he's a capable leader. Yeah, which one is it, right? They say, oh, he's the best manager. He's the best manager. How come you have every person you pick that you then turn around and go, loser, idiot? I should have never picked him. I'm so sorry, I picked the wrong guy again and again and again and again and again. So is he capable or is he not capable? Okay, no, the reality is what happens is they start working with Trump and they're like, oh, he's a full-blown, actual, certifiable lunatic. We have to make sure that he doesn't hurt the country massively. Nope, I don't see it. Tucker Carlson didn't say it, so it isn't true. Professor Dum Dum Door wrote in, don't look up plus the Hunger Games equals America. Unfortunately, an excellent analysis in just 2 movies. Shy Coltrane 42 says Scarborough's an idiot who's completely out of touch. Equating rape victims to a loaf of bread is dismissive and disgusting. Justin writes in, what would be a bipartisan bill on abortion rights Anyway, there is no compromised position with people who want to control half the population. Maybe you can control them for 3 months or 6 months, snatch their bodies with the government for a shorter period of time, Scarborough might say. Democracy Forsake says these jackasses are scrambling so hard to be revisionist. Of course, that is constantly true. That's how propaganda works. I'm out of time. TYT.com/join to become a member. All right, we'll be right back. All right, back on TYT. I just got to say one quick thing, and I'm sorry. There's a super chat by Mike Bynum saying, Cenk, are there no progressive leaning corporates so we can't fight fire with fire? So this is the sad times we're in. I've now had conversations with a lot of progressives saying, isn't there any billionaire on our side? Because it looks like that's the only thing that anybody ever listens to, right? That we are in dark, dark times. By the way, the answer is, I don't know about billionaires or anything like that, but yeah, there are a couple of really good guys who try behind the scenes super hard. There's one guy who's in front of the scenes, Joe Sandberg. He single-handedly got earned income tax credit passed in California, and now he's fighting for $18 minimum wage ballot measure. He's probably gonna raise your wages by $6,000 in California. Again, he's put in I believe over $10 million to get people higher wages. But the exception proves the rule. I found one person I could tell you about. They have almost all of the other billionaires saying, give me more money. And Pelosi and McConnell work for them. All right, go ahead, Ann.
You guys can check out more comments during our social breaks where Cenk reads and responds to them. For now, though, let's move on to Madison Cawthorn. Following a series of Oppo research coming out in the press, turns out Donald Trump is now questioning whether he should continue endorsing Madison Cawthorn, a freshman lawmaker in the state of North Carolina. In fact, 3 sources spoke to the press about this, and Rolling Stone reports that one source said that lately Trump had voiced bewilderment and disgusted confusion about what he had been told about the flood of leaks and footage, asking at one point in recent days if one of the allegations was that Cawthorn was effing his cousin. Now, there was a video that came out, we talked about it on the show, featuring Madison Cawthorn in his birthday suit, if you will. It's being reported as dry humping his cousin. So that's out there. There were other pretty incriminating things that were released as well, including allegations of insider trading and such. Now, another source told Rolling Stone, quote, President Trump is completely weirded out by the allegations. But I mean, is he weirded out enough? Because Trump was pretty vocal in showing support for Ghislaine Maxwell during a press conference. But anyway, Trump is not at the point of pulling his endorsement, but the former president says he wants to sit back and see what happens. But he's been disappointed with Madison and thinks he has problems handling his public relations. Now, Madison Cawthorn is not too worried about this. He claims that President Trump is my friend and the leader of our party. I don't trust anonymous sources and nameless accusations. The fake news attacks MAGA warriors every single day. Their lies won't distract me from fighting for an America First agenda in Congress. I'm just a little distracted right now, dry humping my cousin in the buff and possibly doing insider trading. But once I'm done doing that, I will fight for America First, says Madison Cawthorn. Cenk.
Yeah, so there's some evidence that Democrats are also leaking some of this Oppo research. That is political talk for opposition research. Whenever you're running against someone, you try to find incriminating things about him, and then you plant it with the media. Now, if you're a progressive, the media doesn't want it. You could tell them, oh no, they're like Chantel Brown literally gave multi-million-dollar contract to her boyfriend. Press like, no way we're gonna report that, no way, right? But if the people in power don't like someone, then they report it right away, Democrat or Republican. Now, 9 out of 10 times Democrat, the Republicans get free passes. No, you know what? That's not fair. you've seen it happen to Roy Moore and Kavanaugh, now, et cetera. But the question is it real? That's part of the question, right? And then how should you react to it, knowing that the press is selectively printing things, and oftentimes the person that dug up the Oppo research is picking out selectively and giving it at a certain time. Like, for example, a lot of these videos against Cawthorn, the Republicans apparently always had them. But since
in their back pockets.
Yep. A friend of mine used to tell us when we were going in the workforce, he said, you know, they have secret files on you at work. When we thought that was hilarious and conspiratorial, why would they have secret files? No, it turns out, yeah, people have secret files, okay? And it's definitely in politics, that's for sure. So the Republicans apparently kept a secret file on Madison Cawthorn, and as long as he was saying outrageous, terrible, awful things about Democrats, encouraging violence against them, saying people should pick up their guns, and maybe do some light violence. What is light violence? They never released it. They were totally fine with it. They're like, boy, go get him. And that's when Trump loved him, right? But the minute he said the Republicans were having orgies and doing cocaine, all of a sudden, here comes all the Oppo research. And all of a sudden, he's dry humping his cousin's head. The cousin is putting his hand on his groin, and he's in lingerie with girls. I mean, every kind of thing you can imagine. And by the way, the insider trading, et cetera, they did that first. And the Republican voters were like, who cares? Every one of our politicians is a thief. We willingly give them our money to steal. We have no problem with that, right?
They're like, we be knowing about this. This isn't a problem.
Yeah, and then they tried the lingerie with the women. They're like, but there's women in the picture, and what I wouldn't do for that. They're like, nah, it's fine too, right? So they had to go to the, hey, he might be gay. And then they go, whoa, this is effing disgusting. By the way, remember, this is all to cover up potential Republican orgies.
Okay, so look, I think there's an important lesson to learn from this, which is when a party wants to discipline one of their members, and why? Why would the Republican Party want to discipline him? You know, Cawthorn came out with allegations that Republican members of Congress had invited him to cocaine-fueled orgies. And apparently Republicans getting down and dirty with cocaine-fueled orgies because the backlash was swift and they made sure to discipline him immediately, which makes me think that there's something that they're hiding. But beside that point, Republicans have demonstrated the lengths they are willing to go to ensure that everyone within the party falls in line. And I give you that piece of information because on the Democratic side, you don't see this kind of fight. You don't see this kind of backlash. You don't see this type of strategic maneuvering, if you will, when it comes to, let's say, Democrats like Joe Manchin, Kyrsten Sinema. You think there isn't Oppo research on them? You think you couldn't destroy their political careers if you wanted to? But that's the difference between the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. The Democratic Party only fights dirty when it comes to progressive members of the House or with progressive candidates who are challenging corporate incumbents. That is the difference. Democrats will give Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema all the carrots in the world. They'll talk about them in complimentary ways on various interviews, but they'll never find a way to make sure that they fall in line. Because, Cenk, why is it? Why is it that Democrats have treated Sinema and Manchin differently, given the fact that they have derailed Biden's agenda? It's because Biden never meant it. Corporate Democrats never meant it. And they love the fact that they have these useful members of the Senate that they can point to as the excuse for why they haven't accomplished a damn thing. We know damn well that if they wanted to accomplish Biden's agenda, they could have done it. Yeah. But their donors didn't want it. Their corporate, puppet masters didn't want it. And so they're gonna carry out what their corporate donors want, and they're not gonna fight dirty. Unless it's progressives, of course.
So that's such a great point about Manchin and Sinema and how, of course, they have Oppo research on him. But notice neither the Democrats nor the Republicans use it. They're like, oh, they're helping the corporate agenda. Well, of course, free pass. I mean, look, you don't have to go far with Manchin. I mean, nobody even mentions that he has a coal company, that he's personally profiting by killing these bills. And his son runs that company. And his daughter is the one that massively increased drug prices. She's one of the poster children for how awful corporate America could be. She outsourced jobs from West Virginia.
Can I actually jump in on that, Cenk? Because I want people to understand the criminality involved in what Manchin's daughter did. What she did as the CEO of Mylan Pharmaceuticals is collude with the executives over at Pfizer to ensure that they did not release a generic version, a more affordable version of the EpiPen. And so what she said is, listen, if you promise not to release a generic version, we will have a monopoly on the EpiPen. I will price gouge Americans to the fullest extent, and we'll do some profit sharing that way. And that breaks antitrust laws. It is illegal to do that. But Democrats, including Joe Biden, refuse to play that card, refuse to threaten Manchin and his family for the laws that they have broken, illegal activity that they have engaged in. He refused to do that, knowing full well that he had some leverage to ensure that Manchin would fall in line and help to get his agenda passed. But Biden didn't care about his agenda. He did care about maintaining an excuse within the Senate for why his agenda didn't pass.
Yeah, and you just go on social media anywhere, you'll see tons and tons of brainwashed Democratic voters saying, oh, there was nothing they could do. I mean, what did you want them to do? What could they possibly do? There's actually a million things they could do, but you never heard it because you watch mainstream media. And they tell you, no, you had to surrender to Manchin and cinema. But when it comes to Cawthorn, the minute he touched the interests of the powerful, all of a sudden there was a lot of things they could do. All of a sudden, videos on top of videos, stories on top of stories, right? So you can see, look, and they do this all the time. Democrats do it against progressives, and I mentioned some, but you remember during the race, the 2020 race, they found passages that Bernie wrote in the 1970s to smear him with. I mean, they had people digging and digging for decade after decade after decade to find a smear, which then everyone in the press immediately printed as if he wrote it yesterday. And I predicted for you guys that they would call him anti-Semitic, and by the end of the campaign, they had called Bernie Sanders, who's Jewish, anti-Semitic. They called me anti-Muslim. I was born Muslim. There's no end to how they will smear progressives. But Biden, we asked him, can you talk about the crime law that he passed? He's the one that put all those people in prison. He's the reason we have to do criminal justice reform. Nope, not gonna talk about it. Well, how about the bankruptcy law where we all have student debt we can't get rid of because of Biden? He was the lead author of that, and they used to call him the senator from MBNA. That was a credit card company. It was so well known how corrupt Biden was in Washington that they called him the senator from a credit card company. Okay, shh. Never, ever used it, never shared that. And that's not even Oppo research, that's just policy differences. You see how the media cherry picks evidence to attack whoever they want and then gives a free pass to anyone who's in favor of the powerful. Which then brings us back to Madison Cawthorn, who I owe half an apology to. Don't get us wrong, we hate Madison Cawthorn. He's a nut job, okay? But we're fair. So when he said, oh, people who are against drugs in their policies, I saw them doing lines of coke, I instantly believed him, okay? But when he said that the Republicans older Republicans were inviting him to orgies, I said on the show, there's no way that's true with Chuck Grassley's inviting Cawthorn to orgies. This guy's crazy. Cawthorn makes up stuff all the time. I'm sure he made that up. But now that I see the Republican reaction, oh my God, it might be true. Because if it was false, they'd be like, oh, fake news, who cares, right? But man, they are up in their feelings. They are set to destroy this guy, which makes me think, oh my God, what are they doing in Washington?
I do not want to picture Chuck Grassley getting after it. Just to put it in the simplest terms I could possibly put it in. All right, okay, let's take a break.
The grass is not greener on that side.
No, definitely not, definitely not. We're gonna take a brief break though, and when we come back, we've got more news for you, including, we've got one of the feistiest GOP wars of all time. It's a story that I didn't expect to enjoy as much as I did. Steve Schmidt versus Meghan McCain. I'm here for it. You should be too. I'll see you in a few minutes.
Make sure everybody that you're checking out Watch List. That's live at 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern. That's JR's show, youtube.com/watchlist TYT. You'll love it. While you're checking things out, we tell you one of the reasons for membership is because we're trying to drive positive change. We're giving everything we got. And anytime you tune in, you see us doing that, right? So go to tyt.com/impacts because I don't want you to forget all the wonderful things that you guys have done, right? And so check out that Benjamin Crump interview. How he talks about Trayvon Martin and TYT's role in the audience role is amazing. So that's tyt.com/impacts. Of course, don't forget Food for Thought Trivia. That's where we give you a $100 gift card to Blue Apron where you can get free food. You don't have to enter your credit card information. It's what they call a true gift card. And I'm sorry, still the Facebook and Twitch members we're trying to fix the tech end of that, but if you're a member on tyt.com or on YouTube, you can definitely participate there. So make sure that you're getting a chance to win. By the way, guys, no joke, you give $5-10 for membership and you win $100. 50 people won this week, 50 people won the week before. People are loving it, okay? Now, let me go to our members again. Approval writes in, other points from the Cawthorn Oppo research reaction. 1, those orgies are 100% happening. Why would they even bother spending a moment of research if he had made it up? And 2, an actual opposition party would have made that your body is mine guy. So I know, but Democrats. Anyways, but good points. Tina says, I'm trying to understand why is the GOP worried about Cawthorn discussing coke-filled orgies? Their voters would literally vote for rapists, sexual predators, and murderers. That's true. We did a story at the end of last week where a guy killed his wife who was pregnant. Who was going through chemo, and he smashed her head in with a pot. He won election. It was a small town, and somebody on the panel made a great point. Almost everybody in that town had to have heard of that gruesome murder. He confessed it. They're like, yeah, that sounds good. They elected him. So why would, you're right. If the Republicans came out and said, oh yeah, we're doing coke-filled orgies. If they said we're doing coke-filled orgies with kids, their voters would be like, strong, that's strong, way to go. You get to the kids before the Democrats do, good thinking. I'm gonna vote twice for you, okay? There's nothing that is immoral that you could tell a Republican about another Republican that he wouldn't enjoy, okay? So, Tina, it's a great point as to why they're bothering. Spice Boy Wannabe says, I feel like this Madison Cawthorn stuff has a lot more to do with a frat boy type of hazing culture. Part of the reason that the GOP was holding on to this humiliating stuff was for blackmail should he decide to go against them. The terminally online alt-right space often keeps docs on their direct participants as well, threatening to expose them if they fall out of line. Cawthorn is just one of their latest casualties. By the way, you know who operates
sounds like a fun group of people to hang out with, by the way.
Totally.
Really, sounds like great friends. Yeah.
Yeah. You know why? Who else does that? Cults. Cults keep files on their members in case they want to leave the cult so they could destroy their lives. That's the current right wing in America. We'll be right back. All right, back on TYT, Jen Canana with you guys. Casper, take it away.
All right. Well, I've got no love for Steve Schmidt, who has essentially become a pundit on MSNBC, a longtime Republican, and also an advisor to John McCain's 2008 presidential campaign. I have to say, I did appreciate the multiple Twitter threads that he engaged in, where he was specifically calling out the brattiness and bad behavior of Meghan McCain. Now, let's get into some of these threads, and Tulsi Gabbard makes an appearance. This is a little bit of a surprise. We'll get to that as well. But this all kind of started when news broke that Meghan McCain failed to sell more than 244 copies of her latest book. So less than 300 copies of her latest book. And so Steve Schmidt writes on Twitter, I can explain this. When I kicked, Ashwari, let's mute your mic. I can explain this. When I kicked Meghan McCain off of the 2008 McCain plane because of her outrageous behavior, I talked to her mom and explained what was happening and why. Cindy got weepy and said, quote, I just want to say I raised 2 good sons. I said, everyone knows you did. Man. So basically he's alleging that Meghan McCain's mom acknowledged during this conversation that her daughter sucks, which he gets into more detail. Let's give you that. He says, everyone who has ever worked with Meghan McCain, from ABC, The View, Joy Behar, Whoopi Goldberg, and 1,000 others, have seen the unfiltered version of what the whole of America has seen. That is why in a nation of 330 million people, 247 have bought the book. Nothing new to learn. So he might be overestimating there. I think it's only like 244, but either way, less than 300 books have been sold. Now, then he goes off on Meghan McCain after she liked a tweet that called him a pedophile. So he does a quote tweet and says, after 14 years of abuse and attacks, today is the day I have decided to respond. I am happy to keep the story going after this thread. It only gets better. And that's the tweet that he was referring to, in which Meghan decided to like. And then he goes on to describe Meghan's behavior on the campaign trail. She was only 23 at the time when she had launched her blog about the campaign that her father had engaged in. And so here's what he says about that. I was the first adult that Meghan McCain ever encountered that she heard the word no from. I told her she was unimportant and that the presidential election wasn't about her. I left her on the tarmac when she didn't make the plane because, as I explained to her, the 5,000 people who were waiting to see her father speak and took the time to do it deserved to have him show up on time. That was the way John McCain saw it. He was appalled by Meghan McCain's conduct on the campaign trail, appalled and embarrassed. The tantrums were beyond anything I'd ever witnessed from any other human being. They were epic meltdowns that would test the range of Meryl Streep, Kate Winslet, Jodie Foster, and Anne Hathaway on their best days, raging, screaming, crying at the staff, at the makeup people, at Secret Service. Without any doubt, it was the most rotten, entitled, spoiled, cruel, mean, and bullying behavior I've ever witnessed. It was my job to confront it, and I did. I talked to 24-year-old Meghan McCain the way an adult should have talked to Trump kids. I talked to her the way a retired USMC would. I'm guessing he ends that tweet with. But anyway, listen, while I have my issues with Steve Schmidt, I can put that aside for 1 second and say that from my personal experience, having to work with her on a show called Take Part Live when I was like a fill-in host, it's all true. She's pretty awful to people around her. She was awful to producers. One particular story that stood out to me was when a producer had worked on a segment regarding Obama's drone strikes. This is during the Obama administration. And everything was like spoon-fed to her because she didn't want to do the work. And so as she's getting her makeup done, I was there getting my makeup done as well. Producer walks in with the talking points, with this prepared segment ready to go. It's about the drone strikes. Meghan McCain looked at it and was like, so boring. It's so boring. I don't want to read about this, so boring. And so wasn't interested in consequential foreign policy that was being implemented by Obama. And yet she had a position working as a political news show host, which blew my mind.
Yeah, so I want to complete that tweet that you were reading because it's relevant. And then I got my thoughts on this. He said, I talked to her the way a retired USMC 4-star general failed to do in the White House with Ivanka, Jared, and Jr. They're all the same people. I told her that she was unimportant and that everything around her had nothing to do with her. I told her she was privileged, lucky, and should be grateful. She told me, and anyone else who would listen in response, do you know who the F my dad is? It was the miserable anthem of the total chaos that was the McCain campaign. It never stopped until one day when I said enough. Now, I partly wanted to read that to you because that rings so true, whether it's the family members of elite Republicans or elite Democrats. They grow up with such overwhelming entitlement. And they think when you're a regular person, like, how dare you even talk to me or question me? And there's one thing that I really disagree with Steve Schmidt on about this. He keeps protecting John McCain and Cindy McCain, the parents. Well, I got kids. Look, parenting is super hard. But when your kid throws a tantrum, and especially if they're mean to someone else, and you were gonna go somewhere, you stay home. You don't reward that behavior. You say, well, you want a McDonald's, now I'm not gonna get you McDonald's, okay? Whatever you need to do to teach your kids to be decent people. And look, I know it's super tough and sometimes it doesn't work and people are human and we're all weak and we've got our frailties, etc. But it's obvious that the McCains spoiled the living crap out of Meghan, never challenged her, and all she, my dad, yeah. I mean, we've seen it 1,000 times. So no, and by the way, John McCain's campaign was an absolute mess. You know whose fault that is? John McCain. So I get it, Meghan was the worst of the worst, and you're still trying to protect the ghost of John McCain. But, and I know in Washington, he's an angel and no one is allowed to criticize him. He was a war hawk, loved war, got tons of people killed for no reason, and was deeply incompetent. Couldn't run his own campaign, picked Sarah Palin, could never, apparently according to Steve Schmidt, he was glad that Steve Schmidt did the parenting for him, couldn't control his daughter and didn't want to. So no, Steve, John McCain was a total mess. And I'm not buying your corporate, oh yeah, but we love war, so we love John McCain nonsense.
Now, as you rightly mentioned, John McCain was in fact a war hawk, and Meghan McCain was on board for all of it. Totally admired her father, didn't seem to really have a mind of her own when it came to foreign policy, was very hawkish. And I remember that through personal conversations. I remember that through the comments that she made in the press about various foreign policy decisions. Did not think that drone strikes that were taking out innocent civilians were a big deal. And I give you that context to now go to an Instagram post by Tulsi Gabbard. Let's take a look at this. So in the photo, she's giving Meghan McCain a big hug, and the caption says this: Meghan McCain should be honored that a warmongering slimeball like Steve Schmidt is attacking her. Okay, let's pause. What about the woman that you're hugging who is totally down for the US foreign policy that you purport to be against? Does that matter at all? Does that matter at all, Tulsi?
Her beloved dad that she talks about in every sentence, to borrow a phrase from Joe Biden, everything is noun, verb, my daddy, right? With Meghan McCain. He was literally the biggest hawk of my life. There wasn't a war he didn't want to make out with. He's by the end, he was proposing absurd wars with like, wait, did you run out of countries for us to bomb and attack? And now Tulsi Gabbard thinks that that's the anti-war family? I mean, she's a hilarious joke of a person. The reason she's doing that with Meghan McCain is like, oh, fame, right wing, money, oh. She has no morals at all.
I mean, she's got no value. Like, that's the thing that stands out to me about her, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the one who like postured as like the strongest anti-intervention, anti-imperialist candidate actually ends up to kind of love the very wars that she was speaking out against. I mean, she didn't agree with the Iran nuclear deal, which was actually one of Obama's good accomplishments, right? I mean, you got a deal with all sorts of checks baked in to ensure that Iran isn't developing nuclear weapons. Tulsi Gabbard weirdly wasn't in favor of that. She did a tour in Africa recently, came back and was like, yeah, I'm putting on my military uniform, doing my tour in Africa. I'm really worried about those radical Islamic extremists. No, she loves the wars. I mean, she's got no real identity. She's got no values other than the cult that she's part of. And yeah, she's part of a cult, literally. Read about it. That's who she is. She's a freak. Anyway, but going back to Meghan McCain and her father, just as another piece of evidence of how insanely shameless she is. Recently posted this picture on Instagram. She's holding her daughter, very cute. In the background, you see John McCain's, where he was buried.
She's a joke, man.
She put her book on his gravesite. Like,
oh my God. Well, no live people are buying it, to be fair. So
shameless.
No, I mean, she's using her dad's gravesite. Like when he was alive, all she would ever say is, my dad, my dad, my dad. Here's the picture. Here's my dad, here's my dad, here's my dad, right? He's dead and she's still like, here's my dad in the ground. He's the only one who bought my book. Unreal.
Absolutely unreal. All right, we got to go to one more story before we wrap up the main show, and make sure you guys tune in for the bonus episode. It's gonna be fantastic. Well, there's a story that's been catching my attention. It has to do with Lake Mead. The West is currently undergoing a historic drought, and the drought is so bad that Lake Mead in Nevada near Las Vegas has receded to the point where human remains are starting to be revealed. In fact, last week, there was a barrel that had human remains in it. The authorities estimate that the individual in the barrel was murdered either in the mid 1970s to the early 1980s. They believe that's the case because of the items that were, in the barrel with him. They're items dating back to that era. And now we're learning that more human remains have been discovered because people who would get murdered ended up getting dumped into Lake Mead. But they were under the assumption that we would never discover the human remains, except now there's this historic climate-fueled drought, and the body of water has receded to the point where we're learning all sorts of things about crime that was committed in that area.
Yeah, so I've actually, because of COVID, we did a lot of trips where we drove, and I've gone now to both national parks and lakes, ranging from Arizona to Wyoming. Okay, we've been all over the West Coast. And everywhere we went, people would say, the lakes are drying up. We have to do something. Like the park rangers, the tourists, even Republicans that see it with their own eyes, they're like, well, aren't we gonna do anything? I mean, we're not gonna have any water. Like Las Vegas might run out of water, well, aren't we gonna do anything? And they're like, well, there's nothing you could do, it's climate change, it's going away. And so, yeah, of course, they're trying to do something. Sometimes they'll take a nearby lake that's not man-made and they'll try to use the water from there. There's like, they're going back to treaties from like the 1850s to try to find a way to get water. Guys, it's climate change. It's not coming later, it's right now. There's a mega drought in the West because of climate change. And yeah, we're gonna run out of water.
Yeah. Mobs were a real thing. Like they really did throw dead bodies like in Lake Mead and they were never discovered. Like I know that there are all sorts of unsolved crimes. Like, we've heard all the stories, like cutesy little stories about police and how they protect and serve us and all of that. But there are a lot of violent crimes that go unsolved. We know that. And it's just incredible because now we see with our own eyes, thanks to the drought. I mean, it's just such a dystopian situation, right? How many crimes did end up going unsolved? How many families never found out what happened to their loved ones, right? And we're finding new bodies every week now over at Lake Mead. What a gift. Yeah. What a gift of climate change.
Yeah, that's so right about it. Like this is, if you saw this in a movie, you'd say, oh, come on, you're overdoing it. The climate change is so bad that it's heating up the planet and dead bodies are floating to the surface. Literally what's happening. Okay, I mean, we're living in a nightmare. And it goes to your point about the police, man. We have a huge complaint about how they abuse people way too much, right? But the other issue with police is they're incredibly lazy. You know how there's that all cops are bastards thing, ACAB? All cops are also lazy. Like, oh my God, I gotta find a body. I'm not gonna find a body. You know, I gotta go grab some donuts, man. So now climate change is doing their job for them. All right, in the bonus episode for the members, unbelievable stories, including Kendrick Lamar with a really controversial video that came out. We've got a good explanation of what it is. TYT.com/join or hit the join button below on YouTube. We'll see you there right now. Every day, the Young Turks delivers 2 hours of solid, fact-based, timely news and progressive commentary on all the day's most important stories. We keep our viewers informed while also providing perspective and insight on the news we cover, so you understand not only what's happening, but also what's happening behind the scenes, the stories behind the stories.
We play musical chairs and put these children in one awful detention facility to the next. That's what's happening at the